Republicans are trying to arrest all the gays.
Currently, the ACLU is tracking a total of 399 anti-LGBTQ bills across the U.S. And as of 1 month ago, at least 15 U.S. state legislators have introduced anti-drag bills and bills banning gender-affirming care for trans youth.
First, we're going to be diving into the drag ban, how it affects us, even here in Canada, and what we can do about it. Then in a later episode, we're going to be diving into the ban on gender-affirming healthcare for youth. So stick around for that episode, part 2 coming. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Queer Collective podcast. My name is Carbon.
And I'm Emily.
And welcome to the show.
While these bills are popping up all over the country right now, we're going to be using the newly enacted bill coming out of Tennessee as a case study, as many of these bills are looking quite similar. The first thing that we really want to dive into is what this bill actually entails. What is particularly insidious about this Tennessee drag ban is how broad it is. It says that individuals can be arrested on the grounds of male or female impersonation. The wording here effectively criminalizes just existing as being trans in public or in the presence of children, and bans drag performers and performances from occurring within 1,000 feet of schools, public parks, and places of worship.
Which is the broadest possible definition. If I'm wearing a button-up like I am right now, does that mean that I am considered to be in a male impersonation because society says that men wear button-ups and women don't?
That's honestly the scary thing, and that's what a lot of people are bringing up, is that this criminalizes trans people for just existing. Because
this criminalizes androgynous people for existing. This criminalizes
butch people.
This criminalizes like slightly feminine men. This criminalizes like literally anybody that wears anything that has been defined as like a woman's clothing or like men's clothing.
For a lot of people, that is a really scary element, because when a bill is being introduced like this and it is so broad, you don't know how the criminal justice system is going to be interpreting it. State legislators intentionally leave this amount of ambiguity so that it can be used
for anyone that they deem they don't like.
And they can take it to whatever limit that they see fit.
Yeah.
Because in these bills, they have no problem with defining other terms.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they don't define what a drag performer is. Those found violating the anti-drag law face misdemeanor charges in the first instance, punishable by a fine of up to $2,500 and or up to a year in jail. So that's your first time being caught. For subsequent violations, people will face felony charges, punishable of up to 6 years in jail.
Just for being dressed in drag?
Yeah, which is really scary for performers who make a living out of this. And it's really, really scary for people thinking about wanting to go to Pride, because what's going to happen in that instance? That's something that is a very much a public display of queerness.
Yeah.
Tennessee Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, who is the drafter of the Tennessee bill, compares drag to stripping in a statement given to NPR, stating, "Just as current laws prohibit strip clubs from admitting children, this legislation would also prohibit sexually suggestive drag shows from being performed on public property or on any non-age restricted private property where a minor could be present."
So he is comparing drag to sex work.
Yeah.
And basically saying they're one and the same. That's insane, because anybody who's ever been to a drag show knows that there is no sex work involved.
You can see some performances of drag performers where they are like taking off their clothes. It's sexually suggestive, but drag performers know who their audiences are.
If it's something that is sexually suggestive,
it's happening in the club.
This is not happening out in public in front of children.
And I think a really valuable point too is like there's already bills in place almost everywhere that ban public displays of nudity, especially in front of minors.
The fact that they're targeting the queer community makes it personal.
Yeah, 100%. I think if a queen is getting booked, or queen, a king, whatever, a drag performer is being booked for a kid's story time, they're showing up very differently than they would show up in the club.
They're reading bedtime stories.
Yeah. One important thing to note is that the American Civil Liberties Union has immediately declared its intention to sue over this bill, and I'm sure it will over the other ones happening in other states as well once they're enacted. It appears that they'll be suing over how unconstitutionally vague the bill is.
As they should.
Next, I kind of want to dive into how anti-drag laws are already starting to impact folks. In researching for this segment, I watched lots of different videos of queens, business owners, and community members pleading to Congress to not enact these bills. For working queens, like this really greatly impacts the work that they're going to be doing.
Which means they can't get booked for drag story time. They can't get booked for public performances that aren't inside of a club. They might not even be able to get booked for Pride. Does that mean that Pride is canceled? They're an integral part of the parade.
A scary part for me too is what's happening when you're in transit from your home to the club. I think there's a lot of fear there. Always has been a lot of fear in your transit when you are fully dressed in drag somewhere you don't feel totally safe, right? It's like that's something that's always at the back of your mind when you're dressed up and you're looking extremely queer and extremely visible. But now it's people can charge you, people can come after you over it, and that's a very
people
scary
can arrest
thing.
you.
Yeah, and they can report you as
just
well.
for dressing. This isn't just affecting the drag queens themselves. This is affecting the people that book them.
Beyond this, I think everyone's just really scared of how this is going to be impacting community members just across the board of how are these bills actually going to behave when they are put in place. Because it's one thing to hear a lawmaker express what their intention is, which oftentimes doesn't actually line up.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they lie to like try to get people to be quiet about it, not react to it the way that a lot of people have been.
The scariest thing about this bill is that queer clubs, queer spaces, and queer people have increasingly been the target by many Republicans, many conservatives that go into the clubs and shoot them up, actually. When was the last time you heard in the news of a drag queen doing the same thing?
Hasn't happened. That's
exactly.
The thing.
There's many lives that have been lost already. There's many businesses that have been shut down. There's many people that have been fearing for their lives, and that fear is only getting stronger. And on the opposite side of that, the hatred and the fear-mongering of queer people are the enemy. Queer people are going to groom your children. Queer people are this monstrous thing that we have to eliminate from our society. That's creating such a divide. And to be honest, I think that it's a huge distraction from the larger picture. And we're just fear-mongering and creating enemies that don't exist. When in reality, corporations, politicians are creating much bigger problems in society, in the world, that they are diverging our attention away from by creating these fake problems amongst each other.
It's a big, like, look over there vibe.
Forget about the chemical spill in Ohio. Forget about the earthquakes that are happening in Turkey and Syria. Let's focus on some people dressing in clothing to express themselves. That's the enemy.
Yeah, 100%. I think the distraction is a very good point. Creating a common enemy is how a lot of politicians move forward.
They're using everything that they can to give it a reason as to why you should fear queer people and fear drag queens.
It's really comical to me, them specifically pointing out that drag queens can't come within 1,000 meters of worship areas, of churches. It's like,
that is insane.
Are you kidding? Like, you're scared to bring your child to a drag story time event, but you'll gladly bring them to church in a place where there's been documented harm to children.
There's hardcore evidence of molestation and sexual assault on children from Christian priests. Not saying that we should make an enemy out of Catholicism or Christianity or even priests themselves. There's plenty of priests that are not like that. And there's plenty of priests that actually are trying to change that and move forward in a better light.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that there is proven history there versus in the drag world. So they're making these accusations out of thin air is all I'm saying.
Truly what conservatives are scared of and what so much of the media is constantly talking about is this fear of like quote unquote woke culture. You know what I mean? They're so scared of the norms that they're so comfortable and so used to changing from underneath them. And that's why we're seeing such an intense overcorrection, is because they're turning us into the enemy. It's something that has made queer people for years and years and years have higher rates of mental health issues. Truly, these bills, by taking away trans health care for youth, criminalizing drag, by criminalizing queer people in general, is all things that are going to lead to more harm to children. Queer people are children. We're not just adults. That's going to lead to more children being harmed in the end. And what so many of these politicians are saying is that they care so much about the children.
They don't.
You know, they clearly do not care about children at all. And I saw a creator on TikTok by the name of Paul Likes Language. A lot of these people are comparing what's happening right now to the Holocaust and seeing that the United States is moving in the direction of fascism. This poster that a lot of people are bringing up that was distributed by the U.S. Holocaust Museum that just identifies the early warning signs of fascism. And each one of these things are things that you can see in the U.S. today. It's powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for human rights, which is clearly happening right now against the queer community, identification of enemies as a unifying cause. We've already talked about this, how they're using the queer community as scapegoats right now. Supremacy of the military. I mean, the U.S. has always given billions of dollars to their military.
They also do ban trans people from joining the military.
That's a very good point. Rampant sexism. We just saw Roe v. Wade getting overturned.
Yeah.
Women losing their right to abortion and to life-saving healthcare. Religion and government becoming intertwined. I think we're seeing that in a really, really big way, especially with the U.S. Supreme Court continually electing people who are very religious when the state and church are supposed to be things that are separated.
Religious only for Christianity, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. So the next piece is corporate power protected.
We're definitely seeing that, especially with, for example, Norfolk Southern with the chemical spill has not paid any sort of retribution for what happened there. And it was clear negligence of workers, of safety, of the trains themselves being updated. That has not happened.
And there's just an immense amount of lobbying that happens in the States. I think we know that under this current like capitalist structure going on right now is like the number one thing that government in the States is protecting right now is corporations.
Giant corporations,
under
absolutely.
this facade of like protecting jobs, bringing economic growth, but truly it's like lining their own pockets.
And whenever anything bad happens, such as the chemical spill, it gets covered up, and the people who pay for it are the citizens that live near wherever this disaster happened. And it's never the corporations. It's never the people who are actually responsible for it. And if they do receive retributions, guess who actually pays for it? It's not the company. They'll lay off workers. They'll raise prices. That way they don't actually take a financial loss.
That's a very good point as well. The next piece is interconnected with the last, and it's labor power being suppressed. And I think we are seeing that in a huge way. So many union suppression tactics are happening. We see it coming from companies like Amazon, and it's scary how easily they're getting away with these things. I would hope that if we saw things like this, like the types of suppression tactics that Amazon is doing, so many other companies are doing towards their workers, like, for example, firing them. So many employees have been fired for trying to organize a union. That should be illegal.
Absolutely.
And you can see how hugely the labor power is being suppressed right now, when North America used to be a place where unions thrived. And that's how these years where all of these conservatives are looking back, like, make America great again. The reason things felt great back then was because of labor power and unions. That's why so many workers were getting paid so well. You could afford everything in your life because you're being paid well to do your job. The next is a disdain for intellectuals and the arts. This is another interesting one that I feel like we were talking about. One, the arts does reference drag.
Indeed.
And the intellectuals, I think this is what conservatives are referring to
as the wokes.
The wokes. Yeah, like to woke culture. Honestly, this poster could not be more accurate of the current state of America right now. It's interesting how they'll look at socialism, communism with such fear while they are implementing fascism.
They see one extreme as the enemy, so they implement another extreme as the solution, where neither of them are necessarily the solution. What's absolutely bizarre about this drag ban is that so many conservatives, Republicans, are saying that there's a rise of drag. Drag is this new thing, and it's like killing our youth, and it's killing our society. Drag is not new by any means. Drag comes from hundreds of years ago, from the kabuki theater, from Shakespeare theater. Throughout the years in even somewhat modern American society, there has been cross-dressing the whole time. All that queer people want is just for it to be easier for them to find themselves and for it to be easier for them to be accepted and to express themselves for who they are. There's this very tight-knit expectation of who a person can be and how far they can go with their expression. To break out of that is seen as criminal, when literally it is just expression and just individualism, which is what realistically humanity thrives on. is that individualism and that expression of creativity. And that's how we innovate. That's how we grow. That's how we get more creative. That's how we create new pieces of artwork that express so many beautiful messages. We wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't test the boundaries of what was previously thought possible.
What we're trying to do, honestly, is I would love for my message to reach youth. The reason that we started Queer Collective, the reason that we make this kind of content is because I don't want someone to go through life again not having this information readily accessible to them. For queer people specifically, knowing that there is a way to exist outside of the gender binary is healing, it's life-saving, it's important information to know. The fact that gun laws have been able to thrive while they're trying to point the finger at drag right now is such a point to me that they have no interest in protecting children. Many American citizens are having multiple experiences in their life of mass shootings.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not an anomaly even for you to experience one mass shooting, but now it's getting to multiple. Next, I'd really like to go through a little bit of queer history here. These bills are not new. This is really just a rewriting of American history. Laws restricting gender expression in public and in private have been around in the US for more than 100 years, with one in New York only just being repealed in 2021. Due to North America's dark history with similar drag and cross-dressing bans, there's almost 150 years worth of laws and precedents in this zone. Ironically, with San Francisco being one of the queerest places today, in 1863, they were actually the first place to enact a ban with what is being called a cross-dressing or masquerade ordinance, which prohibited someone from being out in public if they were wearing clothing that was different from their sex assigned at birth, with similar laws taking off across the continent in the late 1800s. I'm saying across the continent because we had very similar experiences here in Canada as well. The laws were used well into the 1900s to imperil, harass, and silence queer people. Many of us are aware that if an individual was arrested, which they often were in notorious bathhouses and gay bar raids, your name would be published in the newspaper and you'd have a criminal record, which would destroy your career and out you to society. So many people would end up being disowned from their family, would lose their jobs.
Just for being queer.
Just for being queer. This is what we talk about when we say that we're really scared about how broad these bills are. These politicians are talking about how these bills are being implemented to just protect children, to keep them away from what they think is sexual performances by drag queens. I think they see the way that queens pad their bodies with chest plates, with hip pads, and they think that makes it inherently sexual. And they think that is the way that all queens are showing up to these story times when it's not.
You know, I think that this really takes us back to the whole sexism point of like, okay, queens are padding their bodies, making their bodies really feminine, therefore it's sexual. Therefore, they are once again playing into sexism because women's bodies are inherently sexual and they are seen as sex objects by these people.
That's an interesting point, honestly. When a boy can go out without a shirt on, a woman is criminalized for it. Your photo, your account is taken down if you post an image that shows a nipple or if you have too much cleavage. Yeah.
What's utterly bizarre about this drag ban is that some of these senators, like Nate Schatzline, a representative in Texas, has in the past actually been dressed in drag. He says it was a high school joke and like a tradition, but it doesn't matter. He was dressed in drag. So what's the difference between a straight Christian God-loving Republican dressing in drag versus a queer person dressing in drag? Is that to them it's a joke and then for somebody else it's not a joke? The fact that he was dressed in drag at all, according to him, should put him in jail, which is absolutely ridiculous, obviously.
Dressing up in a way that isn't assigned to your sex doesn't inherently mean you're queer either. I don't really care if he's queer or not. I don't care if he's like closeted, if that's something that he actually likes to do, who cares? If it's something that he just did for fun, who cares? It shouldn't be criminalized either way.
There also shouldn't be strict laws as what is considered feminine or masculine clothing.
Yeah. What I do want to say is it's so often very easy in Canada for us to point to the States and say, thank God we don't live there. Thank God we live in Canada where things are different. But I do want to bring to everyone's consciousness that these things are happening here. We were recently reached out to by some publication asking for us to comment on the recent uptick in online hate towards drag performers. And they wanted to know if there was anyone in our community who wanted to comment on this. So I did reach out to a few drag performers, and a lot of them are scared. So many of them don't feel comfortable talking about it because they do not want to be targeted. In these conversations, I sense genuine fear and concern for their safety in Canada, in Toronto.
There's plenty of people that are seeing US propaganda and media and are taking it in and saying, yeah, you know what? We should fear these people that are just living their lives and trying to make a living for themselves.
With this major push we've been seeing for anti-drag bills and bills banning gender-affirming care for trans youth, the message I want to send is that while this has been a very painful time for the queer community at large, there's still so much that can be done. Legislation just like this has been repealed before. We have conquered this evil before, and no matter how cruel or devastating the impact of these bills are, they are not foregone conclusions, and we cannot stop fighting and supporting our community in these states.
We want to leave you all with an important call to action, both to allies and members of the queer community. If you enjoy attending Pride events or drag bars, maybe you consume queer content like Drag Race or Queer Eye or even our content. All of these amazing pieces of queer art and expression are a result of the rights and the freedoms our community has and would not exist without long-fought battles against historic laws like the ones being reintroduced right now. So we beg of you to show up for the queer community. This movement needs everyone so that history does not repeat itself.
Important steps that you can take are like donating to organizations like the ACLU, which are implementing important legal battles against these bills. The second is to keep this topic at the top of your mind and bring it into the consciousness of everyone you may know, especially those who it may be harder to convince, like parents and grandparents. And finally, as Canadians, what we can do is sign the official petition to the Parliament of Canada, which calls upon the House of Commons to extend to trans and non-binary people the right to claim asylum in Canada by reason of eliminationist laws in their home countries. We have linked to this petition below and in our bio and urgently ask our community to sign. So speak, Valentina.
Ally! So that is it for this week's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation or got value out of it, please do consider subscribing because we do put out new episodes every single Thursday and you don't want to miss them. Until next time, peace!